Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day. This week, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage said a future government led by him could appoint cabinet ministers from outside Parliament. Drawing some comparison with the American system where top positions like Treasury Secretary are often filled by people never elected to office, Farage dismissed the idea ministers must be MPs. A ministry of all the talents is no bad idea. But whether the public would accept, say, a foreign secretary not in Parliament at all is up for debate. One way to appoint non-MPs easily to top positions in government would be to appoint members of the House of Lords to cabinet. This is exactly what the previous Tory government did when it ennobled ex-PM David Cameron and put him in charge of the Foreign Office. Not only is there no rule against cabinet ministers being peers, but even the Prime Minister could come from the Lords. Until the 1900s, it was very common for peers to become PM. This only changed when conventions started dictating the leader of the government should be an elected MP. The issue for Farage is he is on record wanting to replace the House of Lords with a smaller, democratic upper chamber. Yet keeping the Lords in the short to medium term at least not only might be the easiest way for reform to appoint non-MPs to top positions in government, but if he became PM, Farage may find it to his advantage to retain the Lords. This is because the House of Lords may in the early days of a reform government likely act as a roadblock to reform policies coming from the Commons. Since it would take a while to reform the Lords in any significant way, it could be expedient in the short to medium term to fill the upper chamber with reform appointees. Since the big hitters outside Parliament, which Farage presumably has in mind for top cabinet posts, would have made a name for themselves in the wider world, these people would likely be suitable candidates for peerages. This would not preclude future Lords reform, including creating a new elected upper chamber. However, such wholesale reform could well take time, and the reform boss may find it practical to keep the Lords in the immediate term to guarantee it does not stonewall reform government policies. If reform wins the next election, the British public will expect major policy overhaul, and nothing could get in the way of that. Still, the principle of a cabinet of all the talents is something we should all embrace. In a political landscape marked by tradition and slow evolution, Reform UK, under the leadership of Nigel Farage, is once again proving itself a disruptive force. This week, Farage floated the idea that a government under his leadership could include cabinet ministers who are not members of Parliament, an eyebrow-raising concept in British politics, but not without precedent. Farage's vision draws heavily on the American model, where high-ranking government officials like the Secretary of State or Treasury Secretary are often appointed from the private sector or academia, rather than elected office. While Britain has long held to the principle that cabinet ministers should be drawn from the House of Commons, this is a convention, not a rule. There is a little-known but entirely legal workaround, the House of Lords. Though Reform UK has repeatedly called for the Lords to be scrapped and replaced with a smaller, democratically elected chamber, Farage may find that this much-maligned institution could offer him an unexpected lifeline in the short to medium term. If Reform UK enters government, the party could bypass the Commons entirely to appoint its cabinet of all the talents by giving peerages to non-MPs and installing them in the Lords. Recent precedent supports this strategy. In late 2023, David Cameron was made a Lord so he could return to frontline politics as Foreign Secretary, demonstrating that it's not only possible, but politically viable, to appoint unelected peers to top roles. In fact, until the early 20th century, it was common for prime ministers to sit in the House of Lords. This path would allow Farage to bring in heavyweights from business, the military, media, or academia, figures who command respect but may not want to run for Parliament. Appointing them to the Lords would give reform a fast track to staffing a government with bold, reform-minded outsiders. But there's another strategic reason Farage might want to delay abolishing the Lords: resistance. A chamber filled with Labour, Lib Dem, and establishment Tory peers could become a powerful brake on reform's legislative agenda. Reforming the Lords would take time, but appointing reform-leaning peers early on could neutralize that threat and smooth the path for key reforms. This wouldn't mean abandoning long-term goals. A future reform government could still commit to reshaping the Lords into a modern, elected chamber.